In this video I'm going to be rebuilding a model I call the Junker. This is the first model I built getting back into model building about 2 years ago. Looking back at it now, I'd say a lot I would have changed on this model, but at the time I just didn't have the skills. But now I do, and so I'm going to completely rectify all the things I think are wrong with this model. To save you from having to watch the original video that I made on this model, I painted it and wasn't happy with the way the finish looked, so I decided to remove the paint with white spirits, which kind of dissolved some of the body and ended up turning the plastic into a sort of rubbery texture, as it wouldn't retain its own shape. Thankfully I had already built the chassis and the interior and glued those together and had them painted, so to save the model I just cut the rear quarters off and glued them to the chassis, as you can see here in the early stages. The first thing I'm going to do is remove these wheel arches. I'm also going to remove the roll cage because I just think it looks silly now, as well as repaint the whole thing. Whilst I'm doing that, I'm thinking of giving it some side pipes, because it does originally have some exhausts that go underneath but you really don't see them, but I kind of want to give it some side pipes using these chrome leach exhaust tips. Here you can see I've stripped down the model completely now and put the roof back on with some tape. Just to give you a look at what I'm kind of going for. Although the plastic is hardened and is now holding its own shape, it's also gone very brittle. As you can kind of see that I've accidentally broken off one of the pillars, trying to bend the pillars back in line with the body as they're kind of curled up. I have a fix in mind for this. I'm just going to use some other plastic to make it look a bit like they've just used a scrap metal and just kind of put it back together, but you'll see that once I've built it. As you can see, I've also removed the wheel arches and managed not to damage the frame like I thought I would, and as you can see it really gives it that lovely hot rod look. If you've seen like some of the old 1920s hot rods and stuff. So I'm a little further along the roof now, and you can see I've completely removed the plough at the front. Initially I was going to keep it, but I kind of want to keep this car as a basic car with the very basic modifications for the Apocalypse. As you can see, I've moved these bars closer in. They're mostly just to support the front and keep the front end on, but also to act like some sort of structural roll cage, since the entire front end is being ripped off of this car. Also, you can tell I've removed the rear section of the roof. This idea came with the idea of making it into a ute when I found these bed pieces in my parts box. I thought it would really look good if I try and make this thing look like a bit like a ute. For those who don't know what a ute is, it's an Australian car, a bit like an El Camino, which is just a car slash with a pickup truck. So these bed parts were from a 50s Ford, which if you remember I turned into Stubby Bob, which is another video if you want to look at that. Using up some of my leftover styrene from my scrap pile, I tried to make it look like the bed is being completely abused and just patched up as it's being dented and pierced and such, like a pickup truck would. So far I plan to keep the interior the same, just painting the seats a different colour to make them look like they've come from a different vehicle. Since I didn't put this at the beginning of the video like I usually do, I'll talk about the kit that I used to build this vehicle. So this is the Revell Monogram 76 Chevy Nova from the Street Customs line. Fairly certain this kit's been discontinued, and so you'll have to look for eBay or a second-hand store if you want to pick one of these kits up yourself. So when I was putting this bundle back together, I decided to have a look through my parts box and look at the other hoods that I had. This one's from a 72 Pontiac GTO. So yeah, I put this one on because it gives it more of a menacing look. As you can see, an area like the engine sticking out the hood, as well as kind of opens up lines of fire for the machine gun, as the machine gun again couldn't fire anything over here since the scoop was in the way. So the window is inspired from the van from Metro Exodus, you can kind of tell. This is a Brick Arms 30 cal machine gun. I use these because they scale up quite well to 124 scale vehicles. I have tried 135th and 132 scale guns in the past, but they just always look too small and ridiculous. These are some Zane Industries hazard lights that I've converted into like extra lights or fog lights, as you will. The vehicle does have open headers, which at some point will be changed, as this is supposed to be a kind of a character's vehicle for a series that I'm going to do. So I wanted to leave myself some room to improve and switch things out. And obviously, if you know anything about open headers and an open cockpit car, you'd go deaf quite quickly. So obviously, this will be one of the first changes to the vehicle, and quite a simple fix. Secondly, I decided to keep the second seat out, so the passenger had to sit in the ammo box. Again, this was kind of just foresight for when it's in the series and I want to modify the vehicle, and I'll probably put a different seat in completely from another kit when I find one. Again, you can see the roof here, all meant to look like it's patched up. For the back of the fog lamps, I used some hubcaps which are from a 50s Ford kit, same kit they used for the Stubby Bob car that I built a while back. I also used these bed parts from that same kit, but I had to modify the poles so they make them longer so they fit in the back of this. Oops, the camera. I've already kind of explained the back of the bed with the whole scrap made. Just hit it with a wash and just chuck the wheel in there. These are the sand ladders that were originally on the side of the vehicle, which I've just moved to there because they fit in there. But also this one makes it quite good makeshift tailgate. So I'll probably take some photos of this completely loaded up with junk and this being used as a tailgate. See the side, oh, the rear bumper. This is the original rear bumper from the kit that I had weathered up at some point. And so when I went to go and put it back on, it didn't quite fit well, and just literally you could see the interior, the two there. You could see where the interior tub and the chassis didn't quite meet, and it just ruined the immersion of the model, sort of thing, or at least that's what I thought at the time. So I built that kind of one made up of bars. Coming back to this, I decided to re-put this one back on. To do this, I had to remove the tabs and sit the bumper further back, which kind of makes sense since it's all meant to look like it's being rear-ended a bit, so the bumper's probably being pushed forward anyway. Some more bullet holes. For this, I have the seat and the steering wheel painted a different colour to make them look like from a different car. If you haven't watched the original video, the shifter is actually a Lego shifter. This was because the original one that came with the kit kept breaking when I was putting the car together, and so in the end I just kind of put this one in there and it just works. So we'll quickly have a look at the engine bay. You can see there's the hood, a bit weathered on. I'm taking some pictures at the end so you can see better anyway. Here's the engine. Open headers. Oh, hang on. I forget. All reason for moving those wheel arches. Because I just like the way it looks. Just really like the way the engine looks. As you can kind of see. That proper hot rod look. I'm gonna probably do this in another build at some point. Not too sure which car, but I really like the way that looks, so I'm gonna have to do that again. Something else. Yeah, these supports here were originally on the end here. I've moved them further in. These are mostly to help keep the front on and make the front solid, as it would just break very easily. Also, in real life, it's also there for support. It's kind of why they've moved them further in, so they're hooked up to the radiator, sort of such. So they're hooked up to the radiator, so they look more like more realistic in the sense of they've had to frame it up. Again, this is also inspired from the Half-Life 2 charger. Okay, that'll probably do it for now. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. And as usual, I'll finish out with some better quality pictures of this model.